Before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to remind those healthcare executives out there that are from small and rural healthcare organizations that Capstone provides complimentary consultations. As you may know, we help small and rural healthcare organizations to be the provider and employer of choice to keep care local and margins strong. Go to capstoneleadership.net and you can fill out the contact form there or actually self schedule a day and time that works for you. We'd love to partner with you in executing a winning strategy. Think about this. Providers are often listening to patient complaints. They hear about waiting times, staff miscommunications, billing confusion, discharge or scheduling delays. All the pain points of the patient experience. The providers are hearing this, yet they feel little control of it, right?
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzlaff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage.
Thanks for being here for another episode of Culture Change RX. And today is a solo episode that we call Culture Byte. And the focus of today's Culture Byte is on becoming the provider of choice as a hospital and what that means for your medical staff. So when hospitals talk about becoming the provider of choice, everyone naturally looks to the medical staff. We'll need their buy-in, leaders say. They'll have to be on board for this to work, others will say. And that's logical. But it's also one of the biggest surprises in the Capstone approach. Because when we partner with hospitals to become both employer and provider of choice, we don't actually ask providers to do much at all, especially in that early year or two. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but stay with me here. What we've seen after partnering with dozens of hospitals across the country over almost 14 years now is that providers are primarily the benefactors of the transformation, not the ones that carry the lift of making it happen. So today I want to talk about how culture transformation, when done right, makes the provider experience easier, more fulfilling, and more enjoyable. And I love that because I'm married to a provider who 43 years in practice benefited from this type of transformation in his later years of practice. And I want to talk about how a hospital's journey to become a provider and employer of choice benefits everyone, providers included, but definitely patients, staff, and ultimately the community as well. So when I talk with CEOs and medical staff officers, I often hear a version of this. We want to become the provider of choice, but we just can't get our medical staff engaged in these cultural initiatives. And I understand that frustration. But the truth is, most hospitals are overestimating the role providers need to play in this type of transformation. Culture change, from our experience time and time again, begins with systems, leadership systems, team systems, change systems, and goal systems. And when these systems get activated, all within a framework and a formula that's been well tested over time, then everything else starts to align, including how the medical staff experiences their workplace. So, no, we don't ask providers to lead the charge of this type of change. We build the systems and the structure around them one that makes their day to day interactions more consistent, smoother, and much more satisfying. And once this transformation begins, providers start to feel the difference almost immediately. They start to sense that their patients are happier, the staff are more positive and proactive. The ancillary departments are getting easier to work with. And suddenly, it almost seems sudden. I know it's not sudden, but it seems that way that all of a sudden, the environment of practice feels better. That's when they realize this just isn't another hospital initiative they have to carry. It's a transformation that carries them and their patients. Here's something that many organizations don't fully appreciate. Providers are deeply affected by the hospital's culture, even though they don't control it. Think about this. Providers are often listening to patient complaints. They hear about waiting times, staff miscommunications, billing confusion, discharge or scheduling delays, all the pain points of the patient experience. The providers are hearing this, yet they feel little control of it, right? And they're also weighed down often by staff issues in the healthcare organization, too. So when there's low morale and there's high turnover or unresponsiveness or drama in departments, who gets affected by this, too? Providers and their patients. So all of these frustrations trickle up to and find their way to our providers. So when a hospital partners with Capstone, we're guiding hospitals to address these issues at their root. We help them to adopt and build and customize and optimize systems where employees are engaged, communication is clear, standards of behavior are practiced consistently, and teams are empowered to solve problems before they reach the physician's desk and his or her patients. The results: providers finally get to focus on practicing medicine. I'm going to say that again. The result on the other side of this transformation is that providers finally get to focus on practicing medicine, caring for their patients without these kind of barriers and distractions that do happen day to day in our complex systems that are, people taking care of people, right? So your providers, staff, leaders of the hospital, but definitely your providers get to walk into a more positive environment where their day to day practice can become smoother, less chaotic, and far, far more enjoyable. So you're probably hearing through what I'm describing is that when a hospital becomes an employer of choice, it naturally becomes a provider of choice. And let me explain a little more about what I mean by that. An employer of choice hospital is one where employees are engaged, leadership is strong, and systems for communication, accountability, and appreciation are healthy. That culture directly shapes the provider experience because when nurses and other staff and technicians and frontline teams love where they work, providers love where they practice. Providers start referring patients with more confidence. They know their patients will be treated well, consistently, compassionately, and competently. They trust the handoffs. They enjoy the collaboration, and they're proud to be associated with the organization. We've even seen hospitals where, after 2 or 3 years of this cultural transformation work, the provider retention rate improves dramatically without any specific provider engagement program. Why? Because the environment of practice improves so much that providers simply don't want to leave. Recruitment also gets easier. I love hearing the examples. I mean, we when we get on calls with our partner organizations, with their initiative champions that are leading these steering teams that are oversighting and organizing this entire transformational work, or we're talking to the CEOs in our monthly CEO chats. And we always start those calls with wins and progress and successes. We want to hear what's going well. And I just delight when I hear about another provider recruitment win that happens based on culture. Providers, hard to recruit providers, saying yes to an organization, even a rural, remote, small organization, right? And that's who we work with, choosing them over others because of culture, because of the environment that they get to work in and their patients get to receive care in. So, word spreads quickly among clinicians that this is a great place to practice. Speaking of that, even like way out, like maybe an hour, 90 minutes away at a tertiary facility, those specialists are hearing about this small hospital that's just an amazing place for patients to receive care and providers to work. And they're asking for privileges there. They're asking to, have time in the OR or to have an office there and to bring their patients there. I mean, these are the kind of wins that are possible when you become a magnet for talent, including providers, and a magnet for patients, being the provider and employer of choice. So again, word can spread far and wide among clinicians and even patients about this great place for care and great place to practice. Now, to be clear though, like we don't exclude providers from the transformation process in total. Many of them can and want to be part of it. And so we have guides for our organizations that we partner with. One of those guides is called Engaging Providers in Your Cultural Transformation Journey, where we map out and spell out these are the ways that we can engage our providers in this process. And there are certain things that we definitely want to engage them in. The point here is that they don't have to do, especially that early heavy lift. And it is, that first year to a transformation, no lie, there's work to be done. Adopting this framework, adopting this formula, standing up and embracing and optimizing and customizing these 4 systems for your organization that results in this kind of transformation. There is work to be done, but especially in that first year or 2 of transformation, a lot of that heavy lifting is not done by the providers, and the providers and the patients alike are the benefactors of the transformation and the positive things that are happening in the organization. They've been freed up from the time wasters of complaints and dysfunction of interacting with departments, with staff, etc. So at this point, we're simply inviting them into the transformation journey that's already making their work life better. And that's what makes this approach so powerful and sustainable. And actually, really so doable in the beginning, right? Because if we had to count on a lot of contributions from our providers and that early year or 2, it's going to be a barrier, right? Because they're busy. They have to be working top of license. They need their time, energy focused on caring for patients. So in the first year or 2, they're widely the benefactors of this transformation. And then as the transformation continues, gets deeply rooted and optimized in the organization, our providers are going to really be inspired to contribute and wanting to keep this alive, right? They're going to want to be part of that because they see the benefits and they do want to make sure that if there's something they can do to help make it stick and even take it to a new level, that they want to be part of it. So, if you're a hospital executive wondering how to engage your providers in cultural transformation, here's what I have to say. Start by creating an environment they'll want to be part of and initiate that transformation that they're going to want to be part of. And when they start to sense that recruitment's getting easier and retention is improving and patient outcomes are rising, and they themselves are rediscovering the meaning and satisfaction that drew them into medicine in the first place, now it's going to be an easy ask and even an easy lift for them to be part of the journey onward. So at Capstone, we guide small and rural hospitals through that process, right? Not by adding more to the provider's plate, but by changing the plate itself. Because when a hospital's culture is strong, everyone should win. And actually, I love that word win because, winning is fun. Got to have a nod out there to Dan, CEO out there, who says, winning is fun and losing sucks. And so it is fun to win. It is fun to make this transformation. And it is so fun and so rewarding to see the benefits for the providers, for their patients, for all the staff and all the leaders, and in the end, the community served by the healthcare organization. So thank you for joining me today to learn more about Capstone's proven approach to becoming an employer and provider of choice. And if your organization knows, like you sense it, you know that your organization needs a formalized effort, a formalized strategy and approach, a proven one that can help your organization make the kind of changes I'm talking about here today that benefit providers, benefit their patients, benefit the staff, benefit the leaders, benefit the community. If you're an organization needing that, Capstone is here for you. That is what we do. That is what we specialize in. I don't know why you're waiting to pick up the phone and give us a call, 906-259-0542, or email me, Sue at capstoneleadership.net, or go to our website, capstoneleadership.net. See that contact page right there. You can even book a call right there. Self-schedule a call. Let's talk about what's going on in your organization. Let's talk about what's going on with your providers, your leaders, your staff, your reputation in the community as a provider and an employer of choice. So I invite you to schedule that time for us to talk about your organization, its needs in this area, and our ability to help. And if your organization is doing great in this area, but you know organizations that could use this help, feel free to share this episode with them. We would very much appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too. And until next week, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you every Wednesday for another episode of Culture Change RX. Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.